So what if the secret to surviving a totally chaotic airport or getting exactly what you want from a super unhelpful hotel clerk or just, fundamentally lowering your daily anxiety, what if all of that was hidden inside an English language learning exercise?
I mean, I know it sounds like a massive stretch, right? But when you actually peel back the layers of how we teach language, you kind of realize we're actually just teaching human psychology.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we are plunging into today. Welcome to the deep dive. So today, our source material is this really fascinating curriculum, and it's designed around a linguistic concept called shadowing.
Right.
But here's the real hook for you listening. We aren't just going to look at this as a tool for someone trying to learn English. We're going to extract the hidden masterclass it offers on, human interaction, on navigating the sheer unpredictability of travel and the absolute art of the perfect complaint.
Which is, I mean, that's a skill set we all desperately need, right? Regardless of whether we're speaking our native tongue or, learning a fifth language.
Oh, totally.
And to teach these concepts, the material uses this really specific narrative vehicle. It essentially follows a traveler's incredibly long, exhausting day, journeying all the way from the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, Washington, to a 10th floor hotel room in the middle of Midtown Manhattan.
Yeah, a really long travel day.
Exactly. And through the friction of that cross-country journey, the curriculum dissects how we actually speak to one another when we are, moving through the real world.
Okay, so before we pack our bags and head to the airport with our traveler, let's establish the ground rules of the actual exercise. You just mentioned the term shadowing.
Yeah.
For those of you listening who haven't taken an advanced linguistics class, what exactly is that?
So simply put, shadowing is an exercise where you listen to someone speaking and then you almost instantaneously repeat what they say.
Like an echo.
Right, exactly like an echo. You trail them by maybe half a second, but, and this is the really crucial distinction, you aren't just repeating the words like a parrot reading a transcript.
Okay, so what are you doing?
You are actively trying to copy the physical rhythm, the intonation, the micropauses, and specifically the way the words connect to one another.
Wow, okay. So if you're listening right now on your commute or, maybe doing the dishes, pay close attention. Because whether you are actively learning a second language or you are just trying to figure out how to survive a chaotic Monday morning meeting, the lessons embedded in this idea of shadowing are profoundly applicable to how you move through life.
Oh, for sure. And to set the stage, the curriculum splits this shadowing activity into two distinct proficiency levels. They call them A2 and then the jump to B1 or B2.
Wait, hold on. Let's pause right there. A2, B2, what are we actually measuring with those letters and number? It sounds like, I don't know, grid coordinates on a map.
Yeah, that's a fair question. That is the CEFR scale. It's the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages.
Okay.
Basically, it's the global standard for measuring how well you speak a language.
Uh-huh.
A1 and A2 are beginner levels. So think of A2 as survival mode.
Survival mode?
Right. You know enough vocabulary to buy a train ticket or order a coffee or ask where the bathroom is. The sentences are very short, very clear, and purely transactional.
Got it. So I would like one coffee, please.
Exactly. Very robotic almost. But then you make the leap to B1 and B2, which is intermediate to upper intermediate, and B2 is really where the magic happens.
How so?
Well, you aren't just surviving anymore. You are adapting. You can handle spontaneous conversations. You can debate. You can catch jokes. And the primary goal of the shadowing exercise we are looking at today is helping a student cross that massive chasm from A2 survival to B2 fluency.
And they do that by mastering what the text calls connected speech, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Connected speech.
I actually spent some time chewing on this concept because when you read a textbook, the words are all separated by nice, neat, very polite little spaces.
Right.
But that is just not how human beings actually talk.
Not at all. Connected speech is the way words physically link together when people talk at a normal, unscripted pace. Yeah. And as the material notes, it sounds entirely different from what you read on a page.
Yeah.
The spaces between the words literally disappear.
Yeah. I was trying to think of a way to visualize this for you, the listener, and the best analogy I could come up with is a fruit smoothie.
Oh, a fruit smoothie. Okay, I like where this is going. Break that down.
So think about it. When you look at a recipe for a smoothie, or you just look at the raw ingredients sitting on your kitchen counter, you see the individual distinct items. There is a strawberry right there.
Yeah.
Next to it is a banana. Over there is a handful of spinach. You can pick them up one by one, hold them in your hand, and identify them. That is written language. That is A2 level. A coffee.
Distinct, separate, easily identifiable.
Exactly. But connected speech. Connected speech is the moment you put the lid on and turn the blender to high. When native speakers talk at a normal conversational pace, all those individual words get completely pulverized. They just blend together into this unrecognizable pink liquid. You can't just reach into a glass and pick the strawberry out of the smoothie anymore. It's fundamentally changed its physical form.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it, because in spoken English, the boundaries between the words completely dissolve. So what are you doing becomes what ya doing.
Right.
I have got to go becomes ikatago. The final consonant of one word violently crashes into the opening vowel of the next word. And what this curriculum is insisting upon, which is so crucial for anyone trying to master any new skill, is that you cannot just intellectually understand the concept of the smoothie.
You have to make it.
You have to physically practice making it.
Which means talking out loud to yourself over and over.
Yes, you have to practice this out loud because it is fundamentally about muscle memory. It's a physical act, not just a mental one.
Yeah.
There is a really profound piece of advice in the lesson notes. It says, you don't just listen to hear the words, you have to literally feel how it sits in your mouth.
Feel how it sits in your mouth. Wow. It's highly visceral. It almost sounds like wine tasting. But let me push back on this a little bit because I think we really need to acknowledge the reality of human behavior here.
Okay, go for it.
The curriculum freely admits that people are going to feel, quote, a little silly repeating things out loud, especially if they are sitting on a public bus with their headphones on or pacing around their living room muttering to themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
And let's be honest, nobody likes looking foolish. If I'm a professional, say I'm an executive trying to learn Spanish or just a junior employee trying to learn the sort of corporate language of my new boardroom, leaning into looking silly sounds like terrible advice.
Well, thank you.
I mean, in a high-stakes environment, if I fumble my words, I'm not learning, I'm losing credibility, doesn't this deep feeling of discomfort usually make people just, shut down?
It absolutely makes people shut down. Human beings are biologically hardwired to avoid looking foolish or feeling incompetent, because historically, being the incompetent one in the tribe meant you got left behind.
Right.
But you are conflating two totally different environments. You have the practice arena and the performance arena.
Okay, distinguish those for me.
The boardroom is the performance arena. You obviously want to be polished there, but shadowing, sitting on your couch, muttering to yourself, that is the practice arena. And here is the counterintuitive wisdom the material offers. In the practice arena, the discomfort isn't a side effect of the learning. The discomfort is the actual point.
Wait, the discomfort is the point. That sounds incredibly masochistic.
It's just neuroscience. The text explicitly states that the real work does not happen in the parts that already feel comfortable. It says the uncomfortable part is the part that's teaching you something. Think about what is happening in your brain. When you stumble, when your tongue physically ties itself in a knot trying to blend those words, when you feel acutely silly because the words aren't flowing, that friction is the exact moment your brain is laying down new myelin sheaths. It is literally rewiring its neural pathways.
That makes a lot of sense.
If it feels perfectly comfortable, you are just regurgitating what you already know. You are staying in A2. You aren't growing.
So the friction is basically the signal that the upgrade is currently installing.
Exactly. You have to embrace the awkwardness.
Well, speaking of awkwardness and friction and things absolutely not going smoothly, let's jump right into the narrative. The curriculum drops us into one of the most universally uncomfortable, high-friction environments known to modern humanity.
Oh, yeah. The airport at the crack of dawn.
Right. Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. It is 6:00 a.m. Our traveler hasn't slept much. They are dragging a roller suitcase through the terminal, trying to find the check-in counter under those awful, harsh fluorescent lights. They get in line, they wait, they shuffle forward, and finally they step up to the desk.
And immediately, there is a massive point of failure. The airline agent asks for a passport and a booking confirmation. The traveler hands over the passport, but then they start digging through their bag.
Oh, no!
Yeah, they are scrolling frantically on their phone. The Wi-Fi is spotty. And they just cannot find that confirmation email anywhere.
If you are listening to this, I guarantee your heart rate just ticked up a little bit because we have all been there, the cold sweat, the line of deeply annoyed, over-caffeinated people standing right behind you.
Totally.
The agent just staring at you blankly. You look, as the narrative describes it, like a disaster. And in this moment of acute high-stakes stress, the traveler doesn't panic. They don't just put their hand up and say, wait. They use a very specific phrase. They look at the agent and say, I'm sorry. Bear with me for just a moment.
Bear with me. The curriculum completely halts the narrative right here to dissect this exact phrase because it is an incredibly powerful psychological tool, and they make a specific point to contrast it with other common phrases we usually default to. They say it is not wait, and it is not hold on.
But practically speaking, why is that distinction so important? I mean, if I tell someone to wait or give me a second, aren't I communicating the exact same logistical information? I am telling them that the process is paused and I need more time.
Logistically, yeah, the information is identical. But psychologically, the message is entirely different. Let's look at the power dynamics. Ria, hold on, or give me a second. Are imperatives. They are commands. When you use an imperative, you are telling the other person what to do. You are restricting their agency.
Oh, wow. I didn't think of it like that. If I'm fumbling with my phone, holding up the line, and I look at a stressed out airline employee and bark, wait, I'm essentially giving them an order. I'm the one messing up, but I am attempting to assert dominance over their time.
Precisely. And what does that do? It instantly triggers an adversarial dynamic. It triggers their amygdala. Humans absolutely hate having their time wasted, and they especially hate being commanded by someone who is currently failing.
Yeah, that's a bad combo.
But bear with me, as the lesson defines it, completely rewrites that dynamic. It is inherently polite, it is not a command, it is a request for partnership.
A request for partnership. That completely flips the script.
Right. When you look like a disaster at 6 a.m., looking an agent in the eye and saying, bear with me, is a subtle psychological de-escalation. The word bear literally means to carry a weight. You are inviting the other person into your momentary struggle.
That's so interesting.
You are implicitly saying, I acknowledge that my disorganization is currently a burden to you, and I'm humbly asking you to help me carry this small burden for just a few seconds.
It is incredibly disarming. You're voluntarily lowering your status in the interaction to trigger their empathy instead of their annoyance.
Exactly. It's a linguistic white flag.
Yeah.
The material notes that whether you are on a tense phone call or, fumbling a presentation in a board meeting or standing at an airport counter, this phrase works almost everywhere. It is a verbal shield that buys you grace under pressure.
We see the result immediately in the story. The agent doesn't sigh. She doesn't roll her eyes or tap her fingernails on the desk. She smiles, her shoulders drop, and she says, "Take your time." The tension in the room is completely diffused.
Which then allows the traveler to lower their own cortisol levels, think clearly, and finally find the email.
So, crisis averted. The traveler gets checked in, drops the bag, and heads towards security. And the narrative paints this incredibly vivid sensory picture of the American airport security experience.
Oh, it's the worst.
It's the ultimate gauntlet. Taking off your shoes, taking off your jacket, sliding off your belt, consolidating your laptop and your liquids into those weird gray plastic bins, walking in your socks over a cold floor through a massive full-body scanner while a TSA agent yells instructions at you.
It is the absolute epitome of a process where you have zero control. You are basically cattle in a chute.
But then you survive it. You grab your things off the conveyor belt, you hop on one foot to put your shoes back on, and you walk away from the checkpoint toward the gate. And the narrative describes this profound, almost magical shift in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
The traveler has 40 minutes to kill before boarding starts. They sit in a chair near the massive glass window and just watch the planes taxiing outside in the dark. The text says, "There's something about airports early in the morning. Everyone's quiet, a little tired, a little somewhere else in their heads."
It's a really beautiful observation about liminal spaces.
Liminal spaces.
Yeah, a liminal space is a threshold. It's the space between what was and what's next.
Oh, I see.
The transition from the high-stress, performative panic of the security line to the suspended reality of the boarding gate is a psychological exhale. You aren't home anymore, but you aren't at your destination either. You have no responsibilities. You cannot work. You cannot clean your house. You cannot run errands. You are just existing in this quiet, carpeted waiting room, completely untethered from your normal life.
It's one of the rare moments in modern society where doing absolutely nothing is totally socially acceptable.
Right.
But of course, the spell eventually breaks. The sun comes up, the gate agent gets on the microphone, boarding starts, and they call the groups. The traveler shuffles down the jet bridge, gets into their seat, and the flight attendant's voice comes over the overhead speaker.
And here we hit our second major focal point from the curriculum. The flight attendant says, "Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the captain and the entire crew, welcome aboard."
On behalf of. This is another one of those phrases that the lesson asks the learner to completely stop and sit with for a second.
Yes. The material explains the literal mechanics clearly. On behalf of means you are speaking or acting as a representative of someone else. You aren't speaking for yourself. You are a conduit. You are channeling the captain or a manager or a corporation.
I was really thinking about this phrase, trying to figure out why it holds so much weight, and I think using on behalf of is essentially putting on a verbal suit and tie.
A verbal suit and tie. Okay, expand on that.
Well, the lesson explicitly notes that this phrase is formal, it's useful, and it sounds sharp. When you use it, you are instantaneously elevating the tone and the stakes of the conversation.
Yeah.
Let me give you a scenario. If I am an account manager and I have to send a really difficult email to a client telling them we are raising our prices, if I write, I think we need to change our pricing structure, I am standing there completely naked. It sounds like it's just my personal opinion. I am vulnerable to them arguing with me personally.
Oh, totally.
But if I type, on behalf of the leadership team, we are implementing these changes, I have just borrowed a massive amount of authority.
You've completely shielded yourself with the collective.
Exactly. I put on the corporate suit and tie. The client can't just argue with me anymore. They have to argue with the phantom leadership team. It's fascinating how a tiny three-word phrase completely alters the power dynamic and the perceived weight of the sentence.
It's a psychological fortress. And the material emphasizes that you hear this everywhere, not just on airplanes. It's a crucial piece of vocabulary for anyone navigating professional spaces, customer service, or public relations. It allows you to step out of your individual ego and speak with institutional weight. And conversely, it allows you to deliver bad news without taking personal damage.
So the plane pushes back from the gate. We are looking at a 5.5-hour flight from Seattle, flying all the way across the country to JFK in New York. And this is where the narrative shifts gears again. We move from the mechanics of speech to the absolute weirdness of how the human brain experiences time when we travel.
Yes, this is where we get into the concept of time dilation and cognitive load.
Right. So our traveler has the window seat. They lean their head against the glass and fall asleep for the first chunk of the flight. But about 2 hours in, something happens.
A very mundane interaction, but one that holds a brilliant linguistic and psychological lesson. The man sitting in the middle seat taps the traveler's arm and asks, "Sorry to bother you. Do you know if they're still serving drinks?"
Which is such a universal airplane moment. Waking up disoriented, your mouth is totally dry, and you're frantically wondering if you missed the tiny cup of ginger ale and the miniature pretzels.
Exactly.
The traveler looks down the aisle, sees the metal cart a few rows up, and tells the man, "Yeah, she's coming this way." And the man replies, "Oh, great. I didn't even notice. I blinked and missed it the first time around."
I blinked and missed it. This is where the curriculum completely halts the story again to do a deep dive of its own. They contrast the physical, literal reality of the words with the metaphorical meaning.
Right, because let's look at the literal mechanics. To blink is just the physical action of a muscle closing and opening your eyelids to lubricate the eye. It takes maybe 1/10 of a second. If you literally blinked, you would not miss a 250-pound beverage cart slowly clanking down the aisle of a Boeing 737.
Obviously not. The material clarifies that when people use this idiom, "I blinked and missed it," or "you blink and it's gone," they are not talking about their eyelids. They are describing a subjective experience of time. They mean something happened so fast or their attention was diverted so completely that an entire event just totally bypassed their perception.
The lesson lists these amazing, really poignant examples of how this applies to everyday life. It's not just about drink carts on airplanes. They point out that you'll hear it used about cities changing. You know, you walk down a street in your neighborhood and suddenly the mom and pop bakery you loved for 10 years is a sterile bank branch and you feel like you just blinked.
Or kids growing up. That's the most common one. Parents say it all the time. One day you're dropping them off at kindergarten, you blink, and you're packing their car for college.
The overarching theme here is the terrifying speed of life and the frailty of our attention. But let's dig into the why. Why do we blink and miss years of our lives? What is actually happening in the brain?
It comes down to a neurological concept called cognitive load and how the brain encodes memory. Your brain is essentially an incredibly aggressive deletion machine.
A deletion machine?
Yeah. It consumes about 20% of your body's energy, so it is constantly looking for ways to save power. When you're experiencing something completely novel like your first day at a new job or walking through a foreign city, your brain is hyperactive. It is recording a massive amount of data. That high density of new data makes the experience feel long and rich in your memory.
Oh, which is why the first week of vacation feels like a month.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when an environment becomes routine, Your brain goes into power-saving mode. It stops recording the details. It says, I already know what the commute to work looked like. I don't need to save this file. So it just deletes it.
Wow.
When the man on the plane says he blinked and missed the drink cart, he's acknowledging that his internal world, his thoughts, his book, his nap, completely overwrote his external environment. Because the airplane cabin was routine, his brain just stopped recording.
That is terrifying. If we aren't fiercely present, if we aren't intentionally paying absolute attention, the world just rushes right past us and we don't even log the memories.
It is terrifying, which is why shadowing, the core exercise of this curriculum, is so vital. It forces your brain out of power-saving mode. When you are meticulously tracking the syllables of connected speech, you literally cannot let your mind wander.
So let's give you, the listener, an actionable exercise right now. If you are listening to this and you feel like you are just blinking through your weeks, how do you stop? Next time you are on your morning commute or walking the dog, something deeply routine, force your brain to record. Pick one specific thing to notice that you usually ignore.
Yeah, that's good.
Look at the architecture of a building you pass every day. Listen to the specific cadence of the barista's voice. Force the novel data in, and you will literally slow down your perception of time.
That's a really great application. You're basically taking back control of your cognitive load.
Okay, so the plane finally touches down. JFK Airport, New York City. Local time is 3:1 p.m. The narrative takes us through the heavy, groggy ritual of arrival, the collective standing up and waiting in the aisle, the overhead compartments snapping open.
Following the herd out of the terminal.
Right. Standing at baggage claim, watching the black rubber belt go around and around until it finally spits out your suitcase. And then the traveler walks out the automatic sliding doors and they get hit by it.
The physical atmosphere.
That New York air. Cold, a little sharp. The sudden visceral reality that you are no longer in a carpeted, climate-controlled waiting room. You are standing on the edge of one of the most intense, high-velocity cities on planet Earth.
And here is where the concept of time shifts yet again in the narrative. The traveler notes that the plane landed on the runway at 3:12 p.m. But by the time they navigated baggage claim, hauled their luggage to the air train, bought a Metro card, and figured out the correct screeching subway line to get to Midtown Manhattan, it was closer to 5:00 p.m.
2 hours just to get from the runway to the hotel lobby. And there is a line here in the text that really caught my attention. The traveler's reflecting on this, and they say, New York has a way of doing that. You think something will take 20 minutes and it takes an hour, and somehow that feels normal once you're there.
It's a profound observation about adapting to a new ecosystem.
But I need to ask you about the underlying psychology here. Why does the traveler surrender to this so easily? Think about it. Most people I know, if they map a 20-minute commute on their phone and it suddenly takes an hour because of train delays and walking, they are furious.
Oh, their cortisol's through the roof.
Exactly. They are stressed. They are checking their watch every 5 seconds. They are complaining to anyone who will listen about the broken transit system. Why does this traveler just shrug and accept that this immense friction is, quote-unquote, normal?
Because the traveler is undergoing a profound psychological shift. Remember earlier we talked about the jump from A2 level, which is simple, separate, and transactional, to B2 level, which is connected, spontaneous, and natural.
Right.
This isn't just about language anymore. The traveler is experiencing a B2 level connectedness with their environment.
Oh, I see. They are shadowing the city itself.
Precisely. Listen to what happens when people get angry about transit delays. They are angry because they are imposing their own internal clock onto a city that does not care about them.
Yeah.
They are fighting the friction. New York City operates on its own unique, chaotic physics.
Totally.
If you bring your Seattle expectations or your rural expectations to that subway platform, you will be in a state of constant, miserable resistance. Your cortisol will spike because reality isn't matching your expectation.
So the traveler's surrender isn't defeat. It's adaptation.
It is supreme adaptation.
Yeah.
By accepting that this is just how long it takes here, the traveler drops their expectations. The moment you drop the expectation, the friction stops hurting. You match the rhythm of the environment you're actually in rather than the environment you wish you were in.
That makes total sense. So having adapted to the time warp of the city, they drop their bags at the hotel in Midtown. It's on the 10th floor. They look at the window, down at the rivers of yellow cabs and the white steam rising from the street vents. And they realize they haven't eaten a real meal since before the flight. So they head back out onto the street, and immediately, the pace of the narrative and the pace of the city accelerates drastically.
The traveler walks 2 blocks without looking at their phone for recommendations. The text says, you just pick a direction, and the city does the rest. They find an old deli, not a fancy artisanal place, just a classic old-school New York spot with a fading menu board on the wall and a guy behind the counter who has done this a million times.
And the interaction they describe is almost like a rubble tennis match played at double speed. Let me read how it goes down.
Okay.
The traveler walks up to the counter. The deli guy looks at him and barks, "What can I get you?" The traveler asks for a turkey sandwich. The guy shoots back instantaneously, "You want that toasted?" The traveler says, "Yes." The guy fires back, "Mustard, mayo." "Both, neither." The traveler just says, "Both," and boom! The guy turns around, and 4 minutes later, the traveler's standing on the sidewalk holding a warm sandwich wrapped in foil.
It is the ultimate example of real-world, high-stakes, connected speech. It is pure B2 fluency in action.
But I have to say, for a lot of people, especially if you are a visitor or someone from a culture that values small talk, or an English learner reading the script, that interaction sounds absolutely terrifying.
Oh, it triggers every social anxiety we have about not being fast enough or smart enough.
Right. If you put me in that deli right now, my instinct would be to apologize for taking up space. The traveler explicitly notes no hello, no welcome, just straight to it. We are deeply conditioned to believe that politeness requires verbal padding. You are supposed to say, "Hi there, how are you today? If it isn't too much trouble, I would absolutely love to order a turkey sandwich, please."
Yeah, that's what we're taught.
Isn't it totally counterintuitive that the best way to handle the situation, to handle feeling caught off guard by aggressive speed, is to just blurt out one-word answers like a caveman? Yes, both.
It feels counterintuitive if you were applying the rules of a quiet sit-down restaurant in the suburbs to a midtown Manhattan deli at rush hour. But the curriculum provides a brilliant, vital cultural translation here. The expert analysis embedded in this lesson is crucial. They state clearly, nobody's being rude, that's just the pace.
Nobody's being rude, that's just the pace. That is a massive paradigm shift.
Yes. The material unpacks the situational strategy you need to survive and thrive in this ecosystem. When the environment is moving that fast, hesitation is the enemy. Over-politeness actually disrupts the ecosystem. Think about the guy behind the counter. He has a line of 20 impatient people snaking out the door. The steam press is hissing. The register is dinging. He does not want your life story. He does not care how your day is going. He wants your data.
So in this specific context, efficiency is the polite thing to do.
Exactly. Efficiency is empathy. The text advises the learner, commit to an answer. Do not overthink it. Use short, clear, confident words. Yes, both, to go. By stripping away all the conversational filler, by dropping the "hi, how are you?" you're actually showing immense respect for the deli worker's labor, his time, and the rhythm of the city.
What a profoundly liberating takeaway for you, the listener. Let's really underline this. You do not always need to be overwhelmingly warm or deeply conversational or smiling constantly to be a good, polite person in the world.
No, not at all.
Sometimes just assessing the operational speed of the room you are standing in and matching that speed is the highest form of respect you can offer. It takes the pressure off. You don't have to perform a personality. You just have to connect with the rhythm.
And that successful connection is exactly what yields the traveler their sandwich in 4 minutes flat without anyone getting annoyed.
So we've just established that surviving the deli requires this hyper-efficiency. But the paradox of travel is that hyper-efficiency is actually the enemy of discovery. Once you have the sandwich, you have to completely switch your cognitive gear. You have to transition from mission-oriented to aimless.
Yeah.
Fueled by turkey and mustard, the traveler begins to walk. And the narrative moves from the pure adrenaline of the deli into a much more philosophical space. We are looking at the stark difference between executing an itinerary and just aimlessly wandering.
The traveler eats the sandwich while walking, which the text correctly notes is a very New York thing to do. They end up near Bryant Park as the sun is starting to go down.
The narrative describes this amazing, chaotic cross-section of humanity just flying past a single park bench. It's a sensory barrage. A deeply frustrated woman yelling at someone on her phone. 2 guys on bikes weaving dangerously through the pedestrian crowd. A kid literally dragging his exhausted dad toward a fountain.
It's life at full volume.
Right. It is life at full volume. But the traveler keeps moving north toward Central Park. The sun dips behind the buildings, and the temperature drops rapidly. The text describes it as that sharp kind of cold that doesn't mess around.
And to combat the cold, the traveler stops at a small silver coffee cart parked on the corner.
Just a guy, a generator, and a coffee machine. And the vendor running it is older, with a thick, classic, gravelly New York accent. The traveler asks for a black coffee, and the vendor immediately clocks him. He hears the traveler's voice and says, "Where are you from? You don't sound like you're from around here."
The traveler says they are from Seattle, and the vendor asks a highly specific, very culturally loaded question. He says, "You here for work, or are you just playing tourist?"
Playing tourist. This is our fourth major focus phrase from the curriculum, and it is just rich with sociological implication.
The material takes a moment to dissect the self-awareness embedded in this specific phrase. They explain that playing tourist means doing the classic visitor activities sightseeing, walking around looking up at buildings, wandering without a real agenda. But it's the tone of the phrase that matters, not just the definition.
Right, because nobody actually wants to be called a tourist. Tourist usually feels like an insult. If a local calls you a tourist, it implies you are naive, you are in the way, you are wearing a fanny pack, and you are standing in the middle of the sidewalk blocking traffic to take a picture of a pigeon.
But saying playing tourist, as the material notes, is a defense mechanism. It's said in a slightly self-aware, self-deprecating, joking way. You are acknowledging your own outsider status before anyone else can. You aren't pretending to be a cool local who knows the secret underground jazz clubs. You are happily, casually embracing the fact that you're just there to look at things.
I'm just playing tourist. It completely drops the ego. It's vulnerable. And the traveler admits it. They say, yeah, pretty much just playing tourist. But then the coffee vendor delivers what I think is the most profound line in the entire curriculum.
Oh yeah, it's great.
He laughs, hands over the paper cup, and says, "Nothing wrong with that. Most people who live here forget to actually look at the place."
It is a stunning bit of urban philosophy delivered by a guy pouring $2 coffee on a street corner.
It really is. It completely flips the script on how we view locals versus visitors. We idolize locals. We think the goal of travel is to act like a local because locals know how to navigate the subway perfectly and they walk fast and they know the best pizza spot. But the vendor points out the tragedy of being a local habituation.
Habituation. It goes right back to the cognitive load we discussed earlier.
Exactly. The locals have become so accustomed to the towering, miraculous skyscrapers and the chaotic beauty of the city that it just becomes background wallpaper. They're so focused on getting to work on time that they stop seeing the magic. Their brains have deleted the awe to save energy.
The tourist, precisely because they are out of their element, is the only one whose eyes are actually open.
So the traveler takes his hot coffee and this newfound philosophical perspective and walks into Central Park just as it gets fully dark. And the text describes a massive shift in energy. The frenetic chaos, the sirens, the yelling of the streets fades away. It's quieter. The paths are darker. There are joggers passing by and a guy reading a book on a bench under a lamp wearing huge headphones. The traveler sits down on an empty bench, hands shoved deep in their coat pockets, holding the warm coffee, doing absolutely nothing.
A moment of complete, unapologetic stillness.
The traveler reflects on this exact moment in the narrative, saying, "This is one of those moments that sounds boring when you describe it, but feels like a lot when you're actually in it." I was trying to figure out why this resonated so deeply with me, because if you tell your friends, "I went to New York and sat on a bench," they'll ask why you wasted the trip.
Right, they wouldn't get it.
But the best analogy I can think of for why this feels so profound is the eye of a hurricane.
Eye of a hurricane. Okay, let's explore that.
When you are sitting in your own house, in your own hometown, sitting on your own couch doing nothing, it's just boring. It's mundane because your environment is static. The pressure inside the house matches the pressure outside. But when you are sitting on a quiet park bench in the dead center of Manhattan at night, the contrast is staggering. You are at the absolute geographic center of a swirling vortex of millions of people, endless noise, billions of dollars moving around, and manic energy. The stillness on that bench is only powerful because it is surrounded by a wall of chaos. You find this profound electric grounding moment precisely because you are a stranger in a strange land.
That is a beautiful extrapolation. The contrast is what creates the meaning. And the curriculum explicitly uses the word grounding to describe this feeling. You are anchoring yourself in the present moment through pure, silent observation. You aren't shadowing a speaker. You are shadowing the silence.
But of course, you cannot stay on a park bench in the freezing cold forever. The romanticism of travel is great, but the cold, hard logistics of travel eventually creep back in.
Oh, they always do.
The traveler finishes the coffee, shivers, and heads back out of the park toward their hotel around 9:00 p.m.
And we transition abruptly from the zen of Central Park to the harsh realities of supply, demand, and malfunctioning hotel infrastructure.
On the walk back, the traveler is hungry again. They see a cozy-looking Italian place. But there is a line of 20 to 25 people just standing on the sidewalk outside the restaurant. And they aren't complaining, they aren't looking at their watches, they are just patiently shivering and waiting.
Which, again, the traveler observes is just another rule of the New York ecosystem. The text says, if a place is good, people will wait.
Once again, yielding to the friction. The traveler runs a quick cost-benefit analysis, accepts this reality, decides they don't want to stand in the cold for an hour, skips the pasta place, and heads back to the hotel empty-handed.
Smart move, honestly.
But the friction for the day isn't over. They ride the elevator up to the 10th floor, open the door to their room, and immediately realize the heating unit isn't working properly. It is noticeably uncomfortably cold. They adjust the thermostat, wait 10 minutes, and nothing happens. They know they aren't going to be able to sleep.
So exhausted, they had to put their coat back on, go back down the elevator to the front desk, and deal with it.
Which brings us to what might be the most intensely practical, universally applicable, and valuable lesson in this entire deep dive.
The art of the perfect complaint.
Let's be honest with ourselves. Most of us are absolutely terrible at complaining. We generally fall into two toxic extremes. We either suffer in silence, freezing in our hotel room because we hate conflict and don't want to be a burden, or we go the other way.
Right, the righteous avenger.
Exactly. We storm up to the desk like a righteous avenger demanding justice, yelling at a clerk who doesn't even fix the heaters and ruining everyone's night. But our traveler executes an absolute masterclass in how to get exactly what you want while keeping everyone's dignity intact.
Let's look at the exact phrasing from the material. The traveler walks up to the woman at the desk and says, "Hi, sorry to bother you. The heating in my room doesn't seem to be working. Is there anything you could do about that?"
It sounds so simple. It sounds like throwaway dialogue. But when you break it down, it is engineered like a Swiss watch.
The curriculum excitedly breaks this down into 3 highly intentional genius steps. I'll itemize them exactly as they appear in the text because the psychology here is flawless. Step 1, acknowledge the interruption.
Sorry to bother you. It goes right back to, bear with me. By saying this, you are instantaneously signaling to the desk clerk that you recognize they are a human being. They have a computer screen in front of them, they are tired too, and you are actively stepping into their space and pausing their workflow. You are showing respect before you ask for anything.
Correct. You disarm their defensive posture. Step 2, describe the problem without drama.
The heating doesn't seem to be working. I want you to notice exactly what the traveler didn't say here. They didn't say, you put me in a freezing room. They didn't say, this hotel is terrible and I'm exhausted. They didn't exaggerate and say, it's an icebox up there. They just objectively stated the mechanical failure. And they even softened the objectivity with the phrase, doesn't seem to be.
Why is doesn't seem to be so effective?
Because it removes absolute blame. If I say the heater is broken, I am stating a hard fact that implies the hotel failed me. If I say it doesn't seem to be working, I am leaving a tiny sliver of possibility that maybe I just don't know how to operate the thermostat. Even if we both know it's broken, giving them that out completely depersonalizes the issue. It's not a fight. It's just a puzzle we are looking at together.
It's brilliant emotional intelligence.
Yep.
And finally, step 3, ask for help openly.
Is there anything you can do about that?
The material explains why this is so critical. By asking an open-ended question, you are giving the staff member total room to respond gracefully. You are not putting them on the spot with a rigid adversarial demand like, I demand you move me to a new room right now.
Yeah, that never works well.
If the hotel is fully booked, a rigid demand backs them into a corner where they have to fight you. But is there anything you can do? Offers them agency. It invites them to solve a mutual problem.
I honestly think mastering this 3-step framework is a modern superpower. You combine polite acknowledgement, drama-free objective description, and an open-ended request for partnership. Think about how you could use this with your IT department or your spouse or a waiter. And what is the result for our traveler? The clerk doesn't get defensive.
Right.
She immediately apologizes, types on her keyboard, offers to send maintenance up, and then proactively, without even being asked, offers a room change. Would you like us to move you to a different room? 5 minutes later, the traveler is on the 12th floor in a perfectly heated room.
And because the clerk felt respected, they even get complimentary room service sent up. Hot soup and bread.
Hot soup and bread on the 12th floor, sitting by the window looking out at the midtown traffic. A flawless victory achieved entirely through the careful, deliberate, empathetic use of connected speech.
Which brings the entire narrative of the curriculum completely full circle.
It really does. Let's synthesize what actually happened on this day.
Yeah.
The narrator of the material recaps it perfectly. One city. One incredibly long, exhausting day. A turkey sandwich eaten standing on the street. A cup of black coffee from a cart. A quiet, freezing moment on a park bench. A pasta place they missed out on. And a hotel room that was finally warm.
When you list it out like that, it isn't exactly a packed, Instagram-worthy itinerary.
Not at all. They didn't see a Broadway show. They didn't go to the top of the Empire State Building. They didn't eat at a Michelin star restaurant. But as the narrative notes, it felt like enough. It felt like a complete, rich, fulfilling adventure. You don't need a frantic, optimized schedule for a day to mean something.
And here's the ultimate connection that the material makes and why this entire exercise is so brilliant. They connect the gritty reality of that travel story back to the primary underlying theme of the linguistic lesson, shadowing.
Right, because shadowing is about listening, repeating, and feeling how the words sit in your mouth. But how does that actually connect to sitting on a park bench in New York?
The text states it beautifully. They say, it's not about doing everything at once. You're just in it, paying attention.
Oh man, that's the whole secret.
Think about it deeply. Shadowing a language and traveling through a strange city are fundamentally the exact same psychological exercise. When you shadow a speaker, you cannot let your mind wander to your grocery list, or you instantly lose the rhythm. You have to be hyper-present.
Yeah.
When you travel properly, when you let the city dictate the route, when you match the frantic pace of the deli without judgment, when you drop your ego and just play tourist to dry, you are doing the exact same thing. You are shadowing reality. You are being fully present in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You are leaning into the friction and the discomfort rather than fighting it.
Yeah.
And by doing so, you're forcing your brain to lay down deep, lasting memory.
You are engaged in active, vulnerable participation with the world instead of just reading the textbook. Okay, let's unpack this one last time for you, the listener. We started this deep dive talking about vending machines and muddy waters and how human communication is messy and unpredictable. The material showed us that navigating that messiness doesn't require perfect grammar. It doesn't require a flawless vocabulary. It requires presence.
It requires humility.
Right. The humility to ask someone to bear with you. It requires knowing when to put on the verbal suit and tie to protect yourself and when to just grunt both for your mustard and mayo to keep the line moving.
It's about adaptability and dropping expectation.
Exactly. So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your week. Something to explore on your own that builds on everything we just broke down. Think about your own daily script. Think about your morning commute, your routine interactions at the grocery store, the Slack messages or emails you send at work. How much of your daily communication and your daily life is just connected speech running purely on autopilot?
Probably a lot of it.
Right. Are you just saying the words without feeling how they sit in your mouth? Are you just blinking and missing it? What would happen tomorrow if you treated your own life in your own native language, in your own hometown, like a shadowing exercise?
That's a great question.
What if you actually paused, broke down the rhythm of your conversations, noticed the architecture, and paid deep, intentional attention to the exact words you are choosing to use when the world starts moving too fast? You might just find that the secret to getting a warmer room or a better sandwich or just a little bit of peace on a park bench is simply learning how to stop fighting the friction and start paying attention to the muddy waters right in front of you. Have you ever had one of those days where practically nothing happened? I mean, no massive events, no rigid schedules, you're not running from place to place.
Right.
But somehow when the day ends, it just feels profoundly fulfilling, like you actually learned something huge.
Oh, absolutely. Those are usually the days that actually stick with you. you know?
Exactly. And that is exactly what our mission is for today's deep dive. We are looking at this incredibly detailed account of a traveler's very first day in New York City.
Yeah, just a completely random Tuesday in Manhattan.
Right, a random Tuesday. And on the surface, it reads like, well, just a basic itinerary. A person lands at the airport, they ride a train, they buy a sandwich, they walk through a park, and they go to a hotel.
It sounds super mundane when you list it out like that.
It does. But the thing is, if you look closely at this simple narrative of a Tuesday acts as this hidden masterclass.
Yeah.
It's a masterclass in direct communication and conflict resolution, and honestly, just the psychological power of being present.
Yeah, we are basically treating this traveler's narrative as a behavioral laboratory today. Because the sources entail everything. They arrive at JFK, they navigate the transit, they talk to locals, and eventually they settle into their hotel.
Right.
But we aren't just looking at what they did. We really want to dig into how they engage with the world around them. How do human beings adapt when they're just, dropped into a hyper-complex system?
Okay, let's unpack this because the journey starts with this incredibly jarring psychological shift.
The time warp.
Yes, the time warp. So the traveler lands at JFK right around 3:00 p.m. But by the time they get through baggage claim, figure out the air train, decode the subway map, and actually drag themselves to their midtown hotel, it's closer to 5:00 p.m.
2 full hours.
2 hours to go, maybe 15 miles?
Yeah, something like that.
And the source notes that New York just has this way of making a basic 20-minute task take an hour.
Right.
But the crazy part is somehow that feels entirely normal once you're actually in it.
It does. And there's a real psychological reason for that. We can look at this concept as environmental time distortion.
Okay, environmental time distortion, what is that exactly?
So when you step out of your familiar routine and you drop yourself into a completely new, hyper-complex system, like the NYC transit network, you undergo a forced psychological reset.
Oh, I see.
Because in your normal life, your internal clock operates on these very predictable algorithms, right? You know that driving to the store takes 10 minutes.
Right, you know exactly how long the checkout line takes.
Exactly. But a chaotic, massive city just completely shatters those models. You're processing all these new data points, train schedules, massive crowds, platform changes.
Just the sheer mental load of it.
Yeah, the cognitive load of wayfinding in a new space actually alters your perception of time. And the friction of travel here, the waiting, the confusion, it isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature.
Wait, friction is a feature. How does that work?
Well, it transitions the traveler from their baseline reality to the new rhythm of the city.
Yeah.
It's a liminal space. If you just teleported from a quiet plane straight into Times Square, your brain would probably just short circuit.
It would be terrifying.
Right. The subway delay buffers your nervous system.
You know, that transit time warp really reminds me of trying to download a massive file on a really old computer.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? You sit there staring at the progress bar and it says, estimated time remaining, 10 minutes. And then a second later, it jumps to 4 hours.
And then back to 2 minutes.
Exactly. And at first, you're just incredibly stressed out because you're trying to control the timeline. But eventually, your brain just shifts.
You just give up?
Right. You accept the unreliability, you just accept it and go along for the ride. You let the machine do its thing.
That's a perfect analogy. And for you, listening right now, just think about a time you stepped into a completely new environment. Maybe it was a brand new job with a really steep learning curve, or a foreign country, or even just picking up a complicated new hobby.
Right. Something where you're just totally out of your depths.
Exactly. Think about how you had to completely surrender your usual expectations of how long things should take. That initial frustration is just your old expectations colliding with a new reality.
And once this traveler finally accepts that new timeline, they drop their bags on the 10th floor, and they are suddenly just completely freed from the burden of a schedule.
Right. There's no plan anymore.
No plan at all. And that lack of a plan pushes them straight out onto the street, straight into the unfiltered chaos. Which brings us to our first real lesson in urban communication.
The deli.
The deli encounter. So the traveler walks about 2 blocks from the hotel and goes into this very unpretentious, very old school local deli.
A classic spot.
Right. And the guy working the counter completely bypasses any kind of greeting. No hello, no welcome in. He just looks at the traveler and immediately asks, "What can I get you?"
The transaction is just rapid fire.
It's crazy fast. The traveler says turkey. The worker goes, toasted. Traveler says yes. Worker, mustard, mayo, both, neither. Traveler, Both.
I love that.
And literally 4 minutes later, the traveler is back out on the sidewalk.
And we really need to deconstruct the mechanics of this because it's a perfect study in the linguistics of speed.
Linguistics of speed, yeah.
Because in a lot of places, skipping the warm hello or how are you doing today would be seen as incredibly rude, right?
Oh, yeah. People would leave a bad review for that in a heartbeat.
Exactly. But what's fascinating here is that the absence of that greeting isn't rudeness at all. It's a necessary adaptation to the pace of the environment. The source actually explicitly notes that in busy cafes or delis, brevity is courtesy.
But I have to push back on that a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Doesn't this hyper-efficiency kind of sacrifice human connection? Like, are we just becoming robots? Or is this efficiency actually, I don't know, the local love language of a crowded city?
What's fascinating here is that directness really is a form of mutual respect. It doesn't sacrifice connection. It just changes the shape of it.
How so?
Well, think about the deli worker. They are managing a massive cognitive load. Dozens of orders, the grill, a line out the door. If you start padding your order with pleasantries like, hi, how are you? I think I'll have. You are actually taxing their working memory.
Oh, that makes so much sense. You're being polite, but you're actually making their job harder.
Exactly. The primary strategy we extract from the source here is to simply commit to an answer.
Commit to an answer.
Yes. Short, clear, confident. Yes. Both. To go. Overthinking and hedging creates a bottleneck. When you just commit, it brings massive relief to both parties.
That is such a good point. And if you're listening to this, think about how you can apply that commit to an answer confidence in your own life.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just about ordering a sandwich. Think about high-pressure situations, like maybe you're in a tense boardroom meeting or just trying to get through a busy supermarket checkout line.
Right.
We're so conditioned to soften our language to sound nice, but sometimes the nicest thing you can do is just be decisive.
Give him clarity.
Yes, give him clarity. So, anyway, armed with this turkey sandwich, the traveler is eating on the go, which is a very New York thing to do.
Very much so.
And this fast-paced transaction basically provides the fuel for the next phase of the day. They shift from being an active participant to a completely passive observer.
And they end up in Bryant Park, right?
Right. They end up sitting on a bench in Bryant Park right at sunset, and they just sit there and watch.
Drowning themselves in the chaos.
Exactly. They see a woman looking really frustrated on a phone call, two guys just aggressively weaving through traffic on bikes, a kid dragging his tired dad along the sidewalk.
It's life happening.
It's life. And later, as it gets really cold and they are walking towards Central Park, they stop at this little coffee cart.
This is a great moment.
It is. The vendor is an older man, thick accent.
Yeah.
And he asks the traveler if they are just playing tourist. And the vendor notes that locals often completely forget to actually look at the city.
Which is so true.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The phrase, playing tourist, has a very specific semantic nuance here.
It does. It's not an insult.
No, not at all.
The source unpacks this beautifully. Playing tourist is defined as doing those classic visitor things, wandering, looking at buildings, but doing it without a real stressful agenda.
Yeah, it's done in a very self-aware, almost joking way.
Exactly. It's an open admission that you are just wandering. And the coffee vendor's observation is this incredibly powerful reminder of how routine completely blinds us to our own surroundings.
It makes me think about a camera lens.
Okay, how so?
Well, playing tourist is kind of like switching your camera from manual focus to autofocus.
Well, like that, right.
Right, because when you have a strict, stressful itinerary, you're in manual focus. You're only looking at the target. You only care about getting to the meeting or getting the groceries.
You're filtering out the whole world.
Exactly. You don't see the architecture or the people. But when you relax and switch to autofocus, you just let the environment dictate what's worth looking at. You just take it all in.
That's a great way to look at it.
Right.
And this shift from doing to just observing reaches its peak when the sun completely sets.
Oh, yeah. The whole energy of the city changes.
It alters the entire physical and emotional landscape.
So the traveler reaches Central Park just as it gets dark. And the energy is totally different from that daytime hustle.
It spreads out.
It spreads out. It gets quieter. There are joggers, couples walking. There's a guy just sitting reading a book with his headphones on. And the traveler sits near a lamppost and notes that it feels deeply, deeply grounding.
Which is such a contrast to the subway.
Right. But then as they head back toward the hotel around 9:00 p.m., they spot something that just perfectly highlights the weird contradictions of the city.
The pasta queue.
The pasta queue. They see, like, 20 or 25 people standing completely patiently on the freezing sidewalk.
Just waiting.
Just waiting for a table at a highly reviewed pasta place. And of course, the traveler knows they have zero chance of getting a table, so they just keep walking.
They accept it. But we really need to contrast the two distinct types of stillness happening here.
Okay, lay it out.
First, you have the psychological grounding of sitting exhausted in an unfamiliar park. That's a restorative stillness. But second, you have the absolute paradox of urban patience.
Yeah, this is what gets me.
Right. It's the exact same city that demands a 4-minute deli transaction, but those same people will happily stand on a freezing sidewalk for hours for good pasta without a single complaint.
That is the big question, right? Why do people who ruthlessly optimize their time during the day suddenly surrender all of it to stand in a line at night?
It comes down to the allocation of energy. It's a behavioral economics concept. Time is a currency.
Okay.
So time is ruthlessly saved on the mundane, like the turkey sandwich, so that it can be lavishly spent on the exceptional.
Ah.
The deli sandwich is just biological fuel. It's a commodity. So you minimize the time spent acquiring it. But the highly reviewed pasta is an experience.
And the waiting is part of the experience.
Exactly. The waiting signals that this is valuable. It builds anticipation.
So if you're listening right now, I want you to reflect on your own life for a second. What are the pasta places in your life?
That's a great question.
Right. What are the things that are so undeniably good, a project, a relationship, a hobby, that you are more than willing to wait patiently for them, no matter the inconvenience?
And conversely, where are you wasting time on the deli sandwiches?
Yes. Stop waiting in line for a basic turkey sandwich. Save that energy.
Absolutely. So the traveler gracefully accepts that they aren't getting any pasta tonight.
They do, but they head back to their Midtown hotel and they run into a situation they are not willing to just gracefully accept.
The cold room.
The cold room. The room isn't freezing, but it's noticeably cold. Cold enough to ruin a night's sleep.
That's the worst.
It is. So they go down to the front desk, and this interaction is so crucial. It is a literal masterclass in navigating conflict.
It really is. The wording is so intentional.
So what does this all mean? Let's look at the exact phrasing. The traveler goes up and says, "Hi, sorry to bother you. The heating in my room doesn't seem to be working. Is there anything you can do about that?"
And within 5 minutes, they are moved to a warm room on the 12th floor.
5 minutes. No arguing.
Zero friction. And the text explicitly lays out why this highly effective 3-step conflict resolution framework works so well.
Okay, let's break down those 3 steps.
Step 1, acknowledge the interruption. They start with, "Sorry to bother you."
Right. It shows empathy.
Exactly. It signals that you know they're working and you respect their time.
Yeah.
Step 2, describe the problem without being dramatic.
Doesn't seem to be working.
Yes. They didn't say, "The heater is broken and my room is an icebox." They kept it neutral. Doesn't seem to be working. It removes the accusation.
And step 3.
Ask for help in an open-ended way that gives the person room to respond.
Is there anything you can do about that?
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Okay.
What if the clerk was just naturally unhelpful or having a terrible day? Doesn't this really soft, polite approach just invite them to brush you off like, "Nope, sorry, we're fully booked"?
It's a fair question, but if we connect this to the bigger picture of human psychology, it's actually the opposite.
Really?
Yes. If you go in aggressive and demanding, you trigger their defensive reflexes. They will find a way to say no just to maintain their autonomy.
Right. Nobody likes being told what to do.
Exactly. But the open-ended question, is there anything you can do about that? It prevents putting service workers on the defensive. It forces a collaborative problem-solving posture. You are empowering them to be the expert who fixes the problem.
It's a completely different dynamic.
It is. It's collaborative rather than combative.
That is so practical. I want to challenge everyone listening to literally memorize this exact 3-step script.
It's a cheat code. It is a total cheat code. Use it the next time you get the wrong order at a restaurant or you face some annoying administrative hiccup at work. Acknowledge, state neutrally, ask open-endedly. It's magic.
It really is.
So with the room issue just effortlessly resolved, the traveler's incredibly long Tuesday finally starts to wind down.
They get to relax.
Yeah, they are safe in their new, warm 12th floor room. They order some simple room service, just soup and bread, and they sit there watching the Tuesday night traffic below.
Just taking it all in.
And they summarize the day. They think, okay, I had one sandwich, I went to one park, I had one coffee, I missed out on one pasta place, I did one room change.
It sounds so simple.
But the source concludes that this is enough. You don't need a packed, stressful itinerary to have a profound experience.
No, you don't.
And this brings the entire experience into focus, revealing the ultimate philosophical lesson of the text, this concept of shadowing.
Shadowing, it's such a great term for this.
Can you dive into the dual meaning of shadowing here? Because the text presents it in a really interesting way.
Absolutely. So literally, in linguistics, shadowing is a learning exercise. It's when you listen to a native speaker and you mimic and repeat their words in real time to build a natural connection to the language.
Right, to get the rhythm of it.
Exactly. But philosophically, in this context, it represents an entire approach to life. It's not about trying to dominate a city and do everything at once.
No checklists.
Right. It's about quiet accumulation. Just being in the moment, paying attention, and moving with the rhythm of the environment. Finding value in small, fully realized moments rather than a frantic checklist of, hollow achievements.
It totally reminds me of listening to a classic vinyl album.
Oh, yeah.
Like listening to it straight through without skipping any tracks. When you're frantically rushing around playing tourists, it's like you're just hunting for the hit singles.
Just want the chorus.
Exactly. You just want the big tourist traps. But shadowing is like learning to appreciate those quiet acoustic interludes.
Like eating soup on a Tuesday night.
Exactly, because those quiet moments are what give the entire album its texture. If it was just all hit singles, it would be exhausting.
This raises an important question, though, about how modern society operates.
Oh, for sure.
We constantly measure the success of a day off or a vacation by the quantity of activities. How many things did we do? How many photos did we take?
Right, it's a numbers game.
It is.
Yeah.
But this shadowing mindset completely flicks that. It values the quality of presence over the quantity of activities.
Which is just a much healthier way to live, honestly.
It really is.
So let's recap this incredible journey we've been on.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We started by learning the linguistics of urban speed and why being direct is actually being polite.
Commit to an answer.
Yes, commit to an answer. Then we explored the wisdom of playing tourist and turning on that mental autofocus.
Noticing the world around you.
Right. We contrasted that with the psychology of waiting in line for exceptional things, and we learned that amazing 3-step framework for polite complaints.
Empathy, neutral facts, open-ended question.
And finally, we landed on the ultimate value of presence over itinerary, the art of shadowing.
A very full Tuesday.
Very full. But building on that source's concept of shadowing, which, as we said, is about paying close attention and being present, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final unmentioned thought to just sort of mull over today.
Okay, what is it?
What if we applied this exact shadowing mindset to our own mundane daily lives?
Oh, wow.
Right. Because instead of sleepwalking through our hometowns, what if we narrated our morning commute or our trip to the local deli to ourselves with the exact same hyper-observant curiosity as a tourist on their first night in New York?
That would change everything.
It would. Would we suddenly discover that we actually live in a fascinating place too? We just stopped looking at it?
I love that. You don't have to fly to a new city to play tourist.
Exactly. You can do it on your way to work tomorrow. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure.
We really encourage you to take this newfound perspective into whatever environment you have to navigate next. Have a great day and keep looking around.